Everybody, my name is Eric Larkin with Real Brokers. I appreciate you tuning in to another episode of the Florida Live. Tonight, it's all about short-term and vacation rentals. We're going to talk about what's happening here locally in Cocoa Beach and, of course, Palm Beach, Miami, and Boca Raton as well. And if this is your first time tuning in, as I just said a moment ago, my name is Eric Larkin. I am a real estate agent here in Cocoa Beach on the Space Coast. And besides doing regular videos like this, I do help people buy and sell real estate. So if you plans of making a move here in Brevard County, I'd love to hear from you. And if your plans are to move somewhere else in the state, I have some great connections for you, like Aimee Burroughs in Palm Beach, Hector Chinea from Miami, and Michele Bellisari from Boca Raton. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. How's everybody doing?
Not bad.
Guys.
Yay, excellent. Michele, I didn't think you were going to make it. You finally came in here, huh?
So sorry.
It's all good.
On the phone in regard to a home inspection.
Oh, excellent. Doing your JOB.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And hopefully it lined up and everything will be going well. Hector, you doing all right tonight?
Doing okay. Just had a closing, which was very nice. It went above asking. And of course, there's an issue with the package and some verbiage, but I think it'll be taken care of by tomorrow.
It all works itself out. And
Always.
Aimee, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. All is
Awesome.
good. I'm excited to have Travis on here to tell us all about the short-term rentals and how fabulous they are and how fabulous he is. So,
And that is a great segue. So who is this guy that's joining us this week that hasn't been here before?
this is Travis, and he and his beautiful wife run a company called iTrip. And I'm going to let him explain to you what iTrip is, but he manages short-term rentals. And I will tell you firsthand that I utilize his services and they are fabulous. I mean, above and beyond. And we can get more into that later on. But Travis, I'm going to give the mic over to you right now and just explain to everyone who you are and what you do. And we'll go from there.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. And Aimee, thank you for the gracious introduction. As Aimee said, my wife Karen and I own and operate iTrip Vacations Treasure Coast, which is a franchise. So we operate in the Treasure Coast from northern Palm Beach County all the way up through St. Lucie County. And we offer full service short-term rental management. So when we talk about vacation rentals and you talk about people that own a property, but they use it for some of the year and not for the rest of the year and don't know what to do with it, they typically end up at our doorstep, and we help them out and we manage everything for them, because if they live in Michigan, they really can't be involved in any of the day-to-day part of the operation. So we take it on for them. And when I say we take on everything from, getting the listing ready, getting the house rent ready, but also setting up the license and taxes. And we can get into the details on that, because that alone is daunting. But working with all the municipalities, working with all the guests, getting the guest and managing their expectations and their experience, managing the property, but also the pricing. When we think about, you're not putting the house out once, you're putting it out every single day at a different price based on the supply and demand characteristics of the market. So there's a lot that goes into that. So we manage all of that for the guests, for the owners, so that all they have to do is really collect a disbursement once a month, and everything else is on our shoulders to take care of, and we enjoy doing.
Sounds pretty easy, like easy money.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's the way we try to make it that way. Yeah.
Perfect. So are you specifically all short-term rentals? Like how long of a length of rental periods do you usually work with your investors?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. So I'm outnumbered 3-1 here with realtors, and realtors, you guys are obviously operating a long-term market on a regular basis, long-term rentals, and the state defines short and long-term by the 180-day mark. So anything up to 180 days is considered short-term. Anything that's above 180 days is considered long-term. There's some different characteristics of that. For example, you have to evict somebody in a long-term lease. You trespass somebody in a short-term lease. Big difference. Wow. Because the person that's in a short-term lease is considered a transient tenant versus a long-term tenant. So that there's certain residential rights that a long-term tenant gets over a transient tenant.
That's pretty interesting. I didn't realize that. I know definitely with a long-term tenant, if somebody's not paying the rent or you need to get them out, you have to go eviction, and you either need to have a good attorney that you know to handle it, or have a very good property manager that can handle that as well.
Yeah, and there are a lot of distinctions between the short and the long-term rental that it's really important to understand, because a lot of times, I would imagine as a realtor, you get people that show up and say, hey, I want to buy my vacation home. I'm not going to live there all the time. And in the course of working with them to help them find the home, you might take it on as a realtor and say, I'll manage the short-term side of it. And there's a lot to that, because it's not the same market as a long-term. It's furnished. There's a lot of maintenance that's on your shoulders. You collect up front. You have to pay all the taxes. The cleaning and the turns are a lot more significant and a lot more often. So there's a lot that goes into it besides getting a listing up.
Excellent. And I do have a couple questions, but really quick. Elizabeth Painter from Cocoa Beach, thank you very much for tuning in on Facebook. We have an old friend of mine. We went to high school together. Actually, Gina Watkins is checking in from Arizona, and another local realtor here, Marissa. Thank you all for checking in here tonight. You had mentioned a few times already about the taxes. What kind of taxes are involved with these short-term rentals? And can you break that down a little more?
Absolutely. And this is a really important topic, because it's very confusing depending on literally what city you live in. But it basically goes like this. If the first thing you have to do when you're going to have any rental less than 180 days is have a license to do short-term rentals. And that license is different than a realtor having a license to do realty. It's actually given by a completely different division. It's given by the DBPR, the Division of Business and Professional Regulation, and so they issue the license to the manager or the owner, and then you have to apply for your state sales tax certificate, and that each county has a certificate that you'd have to get, and then there's a surtax that you have to submit in addition to that sales tax, depending on which county you're in. So, for example, Palm Beach and St. Lucie County are at 6%, and Martin County, is a 1% surcharge, and Martin County is a 0.5% surcharge. So you got to know those and set up to collect those taxes. And then at the county level, you have to pay your tourist development tax. So you have to get a county tax. That gets you the transactional tax part. Then, in addition to that, each county and municipality may require a business tax receipt. So you get a local business tax receipt and that's just a fee that you pay once a year to maintain that receipt.
Interesting. So I know locally here in Brevard County, it's a 12% tax on short-term rentals, which it's for the state and for the county. And I'm not aware of the local, like the cities that might charge extra on that to do the short terms. I just know it's like rent plus 12%.
Right. So the 12% is going to be your 6% sales tax and your 6% tourist development tax. What I don't know for your county, because I don't operate up there, is whether or not there's a surtax. So that's something that the Department of Revenue would let you know is what the surtax is per county, and that gets added to the sales tax when you submit sales tax each month.
Interesting. Really quick, Caitlin Burroughs, thank you once again for tuning in. She's like a fan. She's here every week. So thank you, Caitlin. You kind of know her, don't you, Aimee?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I know her too.
Oh, look at that.
Caitlin's a rock star.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
All right, so here, Hector, I think you had a question. I saw it in the comments.
I did have a question, and it was regarding the maintenance. What are common issues that you find when you're maintaining an Airbnb when it comes to, HVAC and, anything with air conditioning and things like that? How do you handle that whenever an issue comes up?
That's a good question. If you're asking me specifically how I do it, it's all about being proactive. So every time we onboard a property, we go through and we look at the HVAC system and the age. We make sure that we have a service contract and we also put a maintenance plan together. So we change the filter every month. Every 2 months, we clear the drain, the AC drain, and put detergent in it, things like that. The water heater, depending on the age of the water heater, you put a maintenance plan together for that. So you always want to drain any kind of sediment out of the bottom of a water heater to extend its life. Same toilets. If a house, one big problem you have with a short-term rental is if it's September and you're not getting bookings because everybody's afraid of hurricanes, then the house sits vacant. And when it's vacant, there's things that the house needs to have exercised or else things go bad. For example, the plumbing. If you don't flush the toilets and run the water, once a week, then the pressure gets low, sediment gets deposited in those pipes, and then when you turn the water back on, that sediment goes into the cartridge for the faucet, and then the water doesn't work. Yeah. So there's just maintenance that, like care and feeding, that you have to do to a house. That's all proactive. You do that so that the guest doesn't have to find the problems. That's the goal, is never have a guest have one of those issues.
Great. Thanks for your input.
Yeah. That's good stuff. So you had mentioned municipalities have their own type of licensing or registration for the short-term rentals. Is that like an annual thing, or is it a one and done type thing?
Yeah, it's a bit of a can of worms. So let's go to a different level and talk about it first.
Okay.
There's every property owner has a right to rent. It's part of being a property owner. You're given that right when you buy the property. Now, you can voluntarily give that right up if you live in a restricted deed or an HOA. Okay. The state has a preemptive rule in place that says that renting your property is a property owner's right, regardless of duration, and it's a residential use. Those are key words, because those words are up for challenge right now. So every year there's some sort of a challenge to that, where they're saying we want to take those property owner rights away at the municipal level, and either regulate it based on the duration, or regulate it based on making it a commercial use versus a residential use. So try to change the terms of that right. So that's a battle back and forth between municipalities and the state about who gets to make those decisions. Where it stands right now is there is a preemptive rule in place at the state level, law in place in the state level, that says that municipalities can't regulate it unless they had something on the books prior to 2011. Okay. So what they can do is they can make you register. So what you'll see, I believe there's 36 or so municipalities in Florida that have some form of a registration process. Now, they can't tell you can't do a vacation rental through the registration process, but they can charge you a fee to do it. And they can require you to meet certain code enforcement statutes. The thing is, they can't have a vacation rental owner or short-term rental owner work by a different set of codes than any other vacation or than any other homeowner would. So in other words, if you have to have parking for a car for every bedroom in the house, then then nobody has that code. I'm just making that up. But if they did that, it would have to be for everybody in the municipality, not just the people operating a vacation rental. But they have the right to enforce the codes and inspect and all of that too. They just can't discriminate against you based on the duration of your rents.
That's interesting. And now, if a municipality had something on their books that would minimize how often or where you can rent a property, that had to have been in place for some time. That's something that they can't change here in today's laws, right?
That's right. There's a grandfather the rule had to be on the books before 2011. Now, some municipalities have gone ahead and tried to do it anyway, and they're testing the rule, because it's hard for an individual to fight the municipality and lose. So they can, it gets caught up in courts and stuff like that. So that's happened a couple of times, but those are the laws, and as it stands right now. And like I said, registrations can be expensive. For example, Fort Pierce just implemented one a year ago, and you have to follow all the same codes that every other homeowner does, but you have to pay $600 a year as a registration fee, which is pretty expensive, considering about 80%, more than 80% of the short-term rentals in Fort Pierce are 2-bedroom condos. So these are people that's their vacation home. They're trying to make some money on the side when they're not in it. $600 is a lot of money.
Yes, it could be. Do you do short-term rentals in Boca Raton? Was that one of your areas?
It's a little south of me, but iTrip, speaking about iTrip, with a shameless plug, it's a franchise model. So there's franchises that own certain territories. My southern border's on North Lake Boulevard, and then there's a iTrip Palm Beaches that goes south of me from there. So he would take that one.
So here's the question. I spoke with the city probably last year, and it was an interesting conversation because basically they were saying, yeah, you can go ahead and do a short-term rental. And we really for a while there, I think they were really cracking down. But then what I was told was, as long as nobody complains about it, we're really not going to do anything, because the state came out with, laws that overrode the municipality. Now, I'm not a short-term rental specialist. It's not my niche. So I don't, I'm not as current on these laws and whatnot. And I don't really work with investors that are buying them. But I thought that was an interesting, interesting observation, because if you go on Airbnb, there are certainly plenty of short-term rentals here in Boca.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If people take the tack of, I'm going to wait till somebody finds me and I'm going to do it on my own, and I'm not going to pay the taxes and I'm not going to register, then what they're doing is they're giving municipalities a reason to regulate you. Because there's no visibility into the health and safety and the quality of the community that you're operating in. But if you're willing to cut those corners, what other corners you're willing to cut? So their imagination's sometimes greater than reality. But if you're not going to spend 4 hours, which is what it takes for me to do all those registrations I talked about. Every time I get a new property, it's about 4 hours worth of going through the paperwork and making sure I've got everything correct and getting everything filed. If you're not willing to take 4 hours to make yourself legal and do the right thing and be above board, then you probably should question whether or not you should be in the business. Because
I don't think that was the implication. I think the implication was that you had the proper documentation.
Yeah.
However, the city can't tell you no.
That's true. They can't tell you no unless there's a code violation.
And the code violation is, if somebody complains, we're going to whack you with code violation. So that was my understanding of how they get around it, but not a homeowner or, getting around the proper paperwork.
Yeah. It's, once people start complaining, then you've got an issue where they're going to try to find something.
Yeah.
And it becomes a witch hunt. So, and in that case, you're right. Even if you're doing everything above board, if somebody does that to you, and really wants to make that their goal, then that's something that you got to go up against. And the best thing to do is, if you're going to do a short-term rental, have a code inspector come out to the house, look at the house, tell me, hey, did you see anything? Because that goes in your favor. You've got a document of, I had the code guys come out here before I started this to make sure this wouldn't happen. What else could I possibly do to be responsible?
Excellent. And here we got a comment here from David Brooks from LinkedIn. David, thank you for tuning in, man. Airbnb collects taxes and remits them automatically to the state. So that's something that Airbnb does. Is this something similar to like VRBO? And I understand you as a property manager, you would do this too.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Airbnb, they manage that transaction. They don't pay the tourist development tax though. So what that means is they're paying some of your tax, but not all of it. They don't pay the surcharge or the tourist development tax. So what a lot of people get involved or get in trouble with when they're just operating on the Airbnb platform is they think they're good because the taxes are being paid at the state level for the sales tax, but they're not registered with a tourist development tax account at the county level. and they're not paying those. Now, I say that, but I will tell you it's kind of confusing because it goes county by county on what Airbnb does and doesn't pay and remit. So that's one of the things that if you're going to be on the Airbnb platform, it's really important to know this is a county I'm in and this is what they do in my county. Happens to be in the counties that I'm in, they don't submit the county tax, they only submit the state tax.
Okay, so would that be somebody, if somebody's using the Airbnb here in Cocoa Beach, like I'm pretty certain David is, does he need to follow up with them to see if they're paying that tax or not? Because ultimately he's still responsible for it, correct?
Yeah, he'd be responsible for it. So you definitely want to make sure, first start with Airbnb and say, are you paying my tourist development tax? And if they're not, then get registered with the county and start paying the tax. And it's tricky because you have to collect the tax from the tenant. So it's very important to know what it is. And in Airbnb, as in other platforms, all the other platforms, you can set those taxes up so that they're automatically added to the transactions. But your responsibility is to collect them from the tenant and pay them to the municipalities.
So, for example, on that, if we know in Brevard County it's not happening through Airbnb, is there a way as an owner in the system to have that added on to make certain that it's collected, or is that something outside of there they have to do?
It's easy to do. It's easy to set up. It's scary to people because it's kind of like accounting. And accounting is really addition and subtraction. It's not that hard, but the idea of having to file your taxes is stressful. And it's the same thing for this. It's really not that hard. It's stressful though to know that you got to do it.
Excellent.
Travis, I just looked here, and going back to talking about the penalties and getting certifications and things like that. For instance, Miami Beach has a major war going on right now with short-term rentals and Airbnbs. It's huge. There are people that are doing it without being licensed, or they're not getting the right licensing there's a fire fee, an application fee, a resort tax fee. For the first offense, it's a $20,000 fine. I mean, can you imagine being a short-term renter or, somebody that owns a short-term rental property and you have to pay $20,000 for your first fine, and then it goes up, increasing by $20,000.
Yeah.
This can bankrupt you if you don't do it right.
Yeah. And, the legislative fights at the state level are usually started in Miami. It's the politicians in Miami that are trying to write the bills at the state level to get rid of that. But what I would say in that is, if you don't have all your ducks in a row, then and they catch you, then that's what you're responsible for. What I'd be interested in, and I don't know the answer to this, but I would be interested in knowing if anybody tried to get their ducks in a row, made the honest college try, getting everything together, if they ever got that fine. Is the city just being vindictive, or are they realizing, okay, well, you tried, you missed this step, but I see you did everything else. Let's help you out and get you on board. I've experienced that with the municipalities. I do this all the time. I do it for a living. This is my job. And every once in a while I get something screwing and I call the tax collector, and they are great about helping me out. I've never had a problem with any of the tax collectors. And at the state level and at the county level, the offices have been wonderful about helping you get compliant. So I would encourage people, if you're going to do it, make the phone call. And that's on the record then that you called in and said, I want to do it right. Help me do it right. And they'll be more than happy to help you.
Right. Here, if you're proactive, for the most part, they're going to work with you. The two major cities that are creating this, it's you against us type thing, is Coral Gables and Miami Beach. Those are the two that, the people in Coral Gables, you're not allowed to do short-term rentals in any part of Coral Gables. And 76% of Coral Gables is residential, and they're beautiful homes. I mean, I get that, but they're not allowing it at all. And on the beach, it's out of control. I mean, there's people doing it left and right. They're not supposed to. So I think I would venture to say that if you're trying to be proactive and you're showing the initiative of doing it correctly, they're probably going to work with you more than say, hey, no, this is you against us. Get your guns out and get your wallet out and start paying, because at the end of the day, it's revenue for the city or the municipality. So they're going to look at it that way.
I think you bring up a great point. I'm involved with the Florida Alliance of Vacation Rentals, And one of the things that we've heard is people say, who are they to tell us and want to know what we're doing and get our revenue backs and make us pay tax. They're the municipality that you're operating in, and they do have a certain right to collect those taxes, and you have a responsibility to abide by the laws. And if you don't, then you're open yourself up to whatever fines come your way for that. And it you become the story for why they want more regulation. If everybody just followed the rules, I just listed out at the beginning of this call, tons of regulation. It's not like we need more regulation. We need more compliance. If we had more compliance, there wouldn't be a problem.
Right. I agree, 100%.
All right. Really quick, if y'all are watching either live or on the replay, thank you very much for tuning in. If you can just drop a comment in there, the city that you're watching it from, and whether it's on the replay. And since we're talking short-term rentals and vacation rentals, please drop your questions there, because we obviously have an expert here with Travis that's bringing us a lot of knowledge about the short-term rental market. Please drop your comments down there. Let's see what I got. So obviously, if you own a property, you're going to have some type of insurance on it. What about those who are guests in there? Is there any type of insurance that they need if they're staying at an Airbnb or some type of vacation rental?
I'm really glad you asked this question, because this is a very lesser known thing with insurance. And when somebody buys a property and has the intent of using it as a short-term rental, there's a special kind of insurance for short-term rental. And if you don't get that insurance on your rider and you just get a normal homeowner policy or even a long-term rental policy, and you have a claim that is a result of damage from a short-term rental, they won't cover it because you don't have the right coverage. So it's very important that you talk to an agent or an underwriter and make sure they understand you're using it as a short-term rental. And they usually want to know the minimum duration. So is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Those matter, because in some cases they won't even underwrite the dailies. Right. A lot of times, weeklies is as far as they go. But when I'm talking to a potential customer and a homeowner and going through, what does it take to be rent ready, I always tell them, talk to your insurance guy first. And let's make sure you understand and have the right policy set up there, or understand what it's going to cost before we move forward. Because even though you might have a beautiful property on the beach, that the fact that it's on the beach and it's in a flood zone and all that, and you're going to use it as short-term rental, piles up so much that the insurance may not even make sense, or you can't get underwritten. So insurance is a really important factor to think of up front when you're considering this business.
How many options are out there for that type of short-term rental insurance? Because I know just somebody looking to buy a regular house or even a second home for themselves that have no intentions of renting it, it's difficult in Florida to get insurance. Are there a few options for them out there?
There are, but it's for the same reason you cited, it's getting harder and harder. So there's a very short list. There's 4 underwriters that I'm aware of that still underwrite short-term rentals in Florida, but they have conditions that they'll look for. So you have to fit in what they're looking for in their portfolio, or they won't cover you either.
Got it. Let's see. Hector, you said you had a question?
I do have a question. So Travis, I have a cabin in North Carolina. It's in a little town in Maggie Valley, which is about 30-40 minutes from Asheville. And so, with the cabin, we have a policy that is through State Farm for the cabin itself. And then we also have, per rental, we pay a small percentage to get $1 million of coverage, which is more than enough money to replace the cabin without a problem. Mm-hmm. How does that work here? Because I don't know how it works here in Florida.
I think it works the same, but I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I'm not understanding the question right, but I think it's the same.
Yeah. Because what I have there is it's almost like an umbrella policy where it covers anything. I mean, that's with Airbnb, Turnkey, Pacasa, whoever it is.
But that umbrella is that's liability only, right?
I thought it was liability only, and I'm pretty well seasoned in insurance because that was my business before real estate. And I can tell you that, you know, from what I understand, from what I read, it's like anything. Like if somebody were to burn it down or something like that, that would actually take first in line, even though State Farm probably would. But then I run into the issue of, is it a long-term rental? Is it a short-term rental and things like that?
Yeah,
So,
no, all right. So there's a couple things. There's, if you have a manager's got insurance too.
right, of course. So,
If the liability is on the manager for something that I've done, then it's going to be me before it's your homeowners and work your way up.
Right.
If it's from the tenant, there's a couple of different types of insurance. You can have something called a limited damage waiver, which is essentially like a security deposit,
okay.
where the tenant will pay a non-refundable fee that will cover a limited damage, so up to a certain amount. That usually is good to cover your deductible for your homeowner policy that has a rental rider on it. Okay, that's typically how it works. The umbrellas are liability. So if that's all that covers, everything that we just talked about is for the damage to your property. The liability is somebody gets hurt on your property or something like that. So that my understanding is the umbrella is that's only for your liability. It's not for damage from a tenant.
Okay.
I'm not an insurance guy. You know, that's just my understanding.
I was just confused because when I read it, I was like, wait, so why do I need a homeowner's policy except for that the mortgage company is asking for a homeowner's policy, all risk. So I was a little confused. And when I spoke to them, they're like, yeah, you're basically covered for anything. I'm like, but is it just liability or is it liability and property and loss of rents and loss of use and things like that? And they said, yeah, you're covered for everything. So I'm still waiting to get that paperwork so that I can read it and then maybe even furnish you a copy.
Yeah, well, I'd be interested because I'm not aware of umbrellas that are beyond liability.
Right.
So, cool. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Aimee, what do you got?
Almost stumped me there, Hector.
I have a lot of questions for you, Travis.
Awesome.
So I guess one of my questions, and this will lead into the next question after that. How are you helping real estate agents with their clients that are looking for investments and short-term rentals?
Loaded question. So, and you know the answer, so because we've done this together. There's a couple of things. I understand the market. I understand the occupancy and the rates that a property can bear, and I'm more than happy to help realtors give that information to their clients. And this is a routine thing where I'll have a realtor call me and say, I've got this person, they want to buy their second home. They're going to want to use it as a short-term rental. Can you help me find a good place for them? And can you help me, help them understand, what the market would bear? So I'll do a pro forma for them that'll give them an idea of how the properties would perform. But I also will help guide them through where they should be looking. And some of it is based on what the client wants. If they want to be on a golf course or on the ocean or in a community with a pool or something like that, all those things are filter downs, in where you can go. But I went through a painstaking effort of looking at every community in my territory, which is well over 1,500 of them, and got their rules and regulations, and I know what's HOA restricted and what's not. And then I put some demographics on each of those things, or not demographics, but metadata about, golf, water, things like that, so that when we get those requirements that the homeowner has, I can filter that down and say, hey, look at these spots and see what you've got. And then I can tell you what the market would bear for any properties that you come back with.
Awesome. So that rolls into my next question for you. And how do you think the market is for these short-term rentals?
Yeah.
Everybody, this is a big question right now, and just in general with purchasing and things of that sort. So what are you seeing in that short-term rental investment side?
The market right now is the off season in our area on the Treasure Coast. Usually the peak seasons January through March, and the shoulders are October leading up to January, and then April through June. July, August, September is no man's land. I'm 90% booked right now, and I'm about 30% above last year's rates.
So would you say this is a great time to purchase investment properties?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a couple of things. Big change in the market permanently. People with COVID learned how to work remotely. And when they did that and they went stir crazy, they learned how to vacation and still work. So what's happening is people are going to another house to do what they are doing in their own house. And, it used to be that you try to get beds in a room and two twins and stuff like that and try to mess with how many head count you can get. Now you want a desk. I'm at a vacation rental that I'm onboarding right now, and there's a desk in the bedroom that I'm sitting at, because it's table stakes to take the quietest room in the house and make it an office, because people are going to be doing Zoom calls on their vacation. What that has done is the seasons and the shoulders and the off season have all had an uptick in demand. Not just that, there's a really strong demand market just in real estate in general, as you guys know, and people want to come down and look, and it's hard to find. So what do? They stay in short-term rentals while they're looking. Not only that, people are seeing the demand and saying, okay, real estate really doesn't go down, so I better buy my retirement home now. And when I do, what am I going to do with it until I retire? Right. So that's creating a lot more inventory in the short-term market, because people are buying these properties and then, using them to generate some income to cover their costs.
As a midlifer, that's definitely an avenue that, people decided to move up their plans by several years because of COVID. So a plan of, we're going to retire to Florida, we're going to buy a second home in Florida, became, we're doing it now, not like in 10 years. And the work from home piece, I have clients that definitely do that. They have beautiful homes, but they work from home. And it's like, even me, I work from home and I'm like, I love my house, but I'm like, I'm so freaking bored, like with the decor, and I need a different flair, which leads into decorating and putting your short-term rental together. And my number one thing is make it Instagrammable, big time. And so I made a couple notes. Tell me if this is all stuff that people should do, Travis.
Sure.
Have great Wi-Fi.
Absolutely. Number one. Absolutely.
Number one. Badass Wi-Fi. Have comfy beds, like
absolutely
comfy beds.
Yep. They don't have to be on the beds. They don't have to be top of line. You don't have to spend $4,000 on a bed, but you have to have a comfortable bed. It can't have a dip in it, and a little healthy dip. If your bed has a dip, it might still be under warranty.
Send it back. Coffee station. I'm a big fan of the coffee station, the Nespresso and the frother, and having that all together. So when I get up in the morning, it's like delish. What are your thoughts on themes? I know in Central Florida with Disney, you see a lot of themed short-term rentals.
Yeah. Now, here's where I wish my beautiful wife, Karen, was on the call, because her and I have completely different opinions on it. And I don't believe either of us are wrong. She thinks themes are past and people are moving away from it. I love the themes, because you've transported yourself into someone else's home, and why not transport yourself into another theme? So I enjoy it, and it'll never go out of style with me, but I'm an old guy, right? But with Karen, I think she would tell you that depersonalizing is really important, because people actually don't want to feel like they're staying in another home. What you're having is a migration away from resorts and hotels to private homes. And those people that are in the resorts, there's a certain anesthetized feel that you have that they want in that house, and that's what's pulling them away from the themes. But like I said, I love the themes.
Well, I think having a personalized hashtag, like having a name for your Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rental, is huge, because if you want to have people share it and tag you, you want to have something that's easy to remember too. And then the other thing is having a wall maybe with a little neon sign, so people are doing their photos in front of it, and videos.
That's brilliant, actually, Michele. I have a couple friends here in Cocoa Beach and Melbourne Village. One of them, he's got a nice riverfront house in Cocoa Beach, and he's nicknamed and branded it Manatee Key. So he's got a silhouette of a manatee. He's got stickers that he hands out to folks as they come in and check out. T-shirts are made, so he's definitely has it all branded. And then a friend of mine, she bought a house, or their family bought a house, and there was a little cottage that they converted into an Airbnb rental or short-term rental. And they branded that Curly's Cottage in homage to her mother, who recently passed away. So they made like a silhouette of her mom, and it's on coffee cups and other things along those lines.
Oh, that's darling.
And I encourage both of them to start your Instagram account so you can start posting things about it and do your own type of promotion through social media. Is that something that you're seeing, Travis?
Yeah, it leads something. So what you're talking about, naming a house, number one, absolutely, we have names on all our houses. But there's another part of that, which is what you're talking about, is when a realtor puts a house up on the market, they're taking pictures, trying to show people where you might want to live. This is the where you're going to live. When you put pictures up for a short-term rental listing, you're saying, imagine your family experiences that you're going to have in this space, right? Because it's the decor is what you're going to step into. It's not a listing decor that may or may not be there because you're going to put your own furniture in. This is the furniture you're going to have. This is the coffee machine that's going to be there in the kitchen for you. So a lot of times the people that are booking, they're booking for their family, and when they're looking at the pictures, they're saying, they're imagining in their head what their kids are going to be doing in that room, or the game night or the movie night or something, whatever they're going to be doing, or hanging out at the fire pit in the backyard or whatever it might be. So the listings are real important to create that experience, and all of the social media extensions that you can do to that for that experience are that way too. A big tip that we give people is have a photo op somewhere on the property or in the house, so that everybody's taking a picture next to the mailbox because you got this cool mailbox, or some totem pole in the backyard or something, because now that is the memory, and that is the experience, and that's the reason why they want to come back there every year too.
That's gold. That's a great idea.
It is a great idea, Travis. Our cabin is on Copper Spur Road, and it's got a copper roof that we just put on there, so it's copper top cabin. And we have two really, they started off as little baby pine trees, and in the last, 9 years, they're huge. So people always take pictures by the pine tree. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And it is a good place for a photo op.
Yeah. Good stuff.
You should have pine tree, you know how you hang the things from your mirror in your car?
Right.
With your air fresheners?
with your hashtag on it, and give them leave them there for people to take with them.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. By the way, we wanted to also recognize Knifey. She said she loved the hashtag idea. Hi, Knifey. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for commenting. So,
most definitely.
Our Tampa gal.
Yep.
So we're talking about some great ideas and things that could be happening to help promote an Airbnb. Are there some things that you're seeing that's happening that people just need to stop? What should they do what should they stop doing in their short-term rental?
Yeah, that's a good point. So number one, there should never be pictures of people in your photos, whether it's intentional or not. Because when people enter your property, they want to feel a sense of it's a new experience, and you take that away from them as soon as you put somebody in the picture. Mm-hmm. So never put people in the pictures, and try to depersonalize as much as possible. If just because something's sentimental to you or has an inside joke to your family or something like that, doesn't mean the rest of the people that are going to stay there are going to get that or even appreciate it. But what you could be doing is you could be setting them off because, again, they feel like they're in somebody else's house. You want to try to take that feeling away that I'm staying in somebody else's house as much as you can, and insert this is your chance for your family to make a great experience.
Travis, and this may sound kind of silly, but I know that at our family homes, we would have books out. We never rented it out to just anybody, but we would have a book at the door, and anytime any of the family members went and stayed there, they would just kind of write like something.
Yeah.
Does anybody do that?
This is one of those things that COVID changed everything. So it used to be that you had a guest book that people would flip through. You'd have games, in a closet that people could pull out, and you'd have books on a shelf that people could read. And then when COVID came out, there were all these COVID cleaning protocols for short-term rentals. And every one of those surfaces had to be cleaned and sanitized on every turn. So there goes the guest book, there goes all the games, there goes all the books. Now that those rules have been relaxed and we've gotten back to some sort of normalcy, some of those things are finding their way back. But it's interesting how they're coming back, but people are very sensitive to sanitizing. So the games that you see aren't the board games with all the little pieces that you got to clean anymore. People are finding more like the Scrabble game, or not Scrabble, a Boggle game, I think it's called, or something like that. Or Pictionary, things that are big things that you can clean, but not a lot of little pieces. Instead of having a whole book rack full of books, you'll have 4 or 5 books, and so people are tapering it back in. It's not like it was before. And the guest book, everything is covered in a plastic covering so that they can be wiped. So it's a lot different now. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine having to clean every tile on a Scrabble game. That would drive me bonkers.
The week that they did the shutdown across the state, that was probably the biggest outroar. Was, what are we going to do with all this stuff?
Travis, is there an online? Is there like an online guest book? Does that exist where people can go online and just sign in there and put in some comments?
Yeah, there are a couple different platforms out there that vacation rental owners, short-term rental owners can look at. I'm not going to name any. I'm not going to give any plugs, but there are, you can actually have a tablet in the house that has all of the job aids for how to work the TVs and how to work the coffee maker and espresso machine and all that stuff, as well as post pictures out by the pool or by the photo op area, or leave your guest comments or something like that. So you can have an interactive experience right on that tablet, and that's becoming very popular, almost table stakes now.
Yep, I see it. We have one in ours. There's one there where people can leave comments and photos and things like that. So yeah.
I love that. I think that just makes it. It doesn't personalize it per se it just personalizes it for the whole experience.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
It's funny how it takes a crisis or a shortage or scarcity to create a new opportunity, but that's what's happened here, and it's not so bad, having it all out there like that.
I agree with you. Not bad at all.
I have a question because I just watched The Holiday, which if you haven't seen that, it's kind of a chick flick. Cameron Diaz and what's her name from?
Oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
They swap houses.
Yeah.
England, LA. So are you seeing a lot of that? Because that's something I'm thinking about, by the way.
It's a slightly different market, and I don't know that it's actually regulated at all.
Sure,
and it's huge in Europe. That's a really big thing in Europe. But this house swap thing, because that's really just 2 people agreeing to staying in each other's houses. It's a little bit more of a personal transaction. But I don't know if there's any regulation at all on that.
Well, I'm an empty nester, my husband and I. So I started thinking about the other thing. I researched and I talked to the property appraiser's office here, is I can rent my house out for up to 30 days a year without losing my homestead exemption.
Oh.
So I'm looking at, I always say, like, to realtors, like, multiple streams of income are a great piece to add to your business. There's no shame in that game. It's smart as an entrepreneur. And I started thinking about it more, and I said to my husband, I said, we should consider maybe 4 times a year renting out the house.
Hmm.
And he's like, I'd be game for that. So I'm just like, because where I am in my life, I'm like, that's like a nice little stream of income that could come in. So I'm investigating it.
I've got a question about that. If you're going to do something like that, you had mentioned, depersonalizing your house. Is it taboo to lock off a room when somebody comes?
It's normal. In fact, every property is going to have a locked room.
Owner's closet.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly right. It's the owner's closet.
Our garage is air conditioned, believe it or not.
Nice.
Don't ask why. But we had a place in the Keys for a long time, so we had, personal things just kind of locked away. But I love that idea of, being able to do that in home swap as well.
Yeah, Susan and I have actually been talking about, what if we could do that? And that's a brilliant idea. I like it.
Yeah.
There's a huge nugget on top of all the other ones that Travis dropped that I can take from this call.
Travis.
Yeah.
So if we do have an investor, I know Aimee asked one of the investor questions a little while ago. So we have somebody that wants to invest for the short-term rentals. Do you have a way of looking at inventory that's out there and say there's a gap in this type of property? We see this particular type of property that's running really well, and it seems to be low in these particular areas. Would that be something that you can do to help us maybe find an investment like that?
Yeah, I have some tools where I'm able to look at the supply and the demand side in inventory, right down to the zip code, and that's usually the level that I'll do the analysis, and I'll be able to see where the demand is versus where the supply is, and say, 3 bedrooms going to do well, 4 bedrooms going to do well, or in some cases, believe it or not, a studio is going to get higher demand than a 3-bedroom because there's so many 3 bedrooms. So sometimes it's not the way you think of when you do that analysis. It's not what you would expect.
Wow, interesting.
Oh, Nike, that's fantastic, Nike. Great idea.
That would be nothing but good vibes. If you can't read that, Nike Burks had said, I stayed in an Airbnb at Stone Mountain where they had a wall with positive notes from guests. If that's not a great testimonial.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Now I'd have to read them on every turn to make sure they're all positive, but
You'd be plucking the ones that aren't.
And I'm glad you said that, Travis, because that's where you got to be careful with those books. I mean, we have issues, and then people get really upset. They get pissed off, and they leave these comments, and you're like, oh, my God. So do you tear it out? Do you leave it in? What do you do when you see something like that, Travis?
Well, you can't shy away from criticism in this business. It's an opportunity, and you have to look at it that way. I'll give you a real life example. I had somebody give me, I've had nothing but 5-star reviews, and then I get a 3-star review out of nowhere, and it was the beds weren't comfortable. Now, I could say something back to that person, but and hit it directly, but that message isn't really. It really doesn't matter of that person right now. It doesn't matter. It's every person that's going to read that review. So all I could do is go buy all new beds and say, we just thank you for that feedback. We have just replaced every bed in the house.
Yep, that's what we did.
There's no other way to deal with criticism other than just address it head on.
Yep, and we also want to thank Tim Hoare for his comment. All these realtors are pros. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all part of Real, and we do what we do.
Yep. And Tim, he was our guest last week. He was the lender that gave us some great advice on VA loans and some other things. So thanks for tuning in, Tim. And I see there's a few people that are watching as well. If you'd like to drop in the chat where you're checking in from, we always like to see across the state or country. For folks that are tuning in, would greatly appreciate that.
What topics would you like us to talk about moving forward? We're always open to your ideas and suggestions.
For future calls?
Anybody who's viewing this. If you
Yeah. And more often than not, a lot of the questions that we get either in the comments for this show, whether it's live or on the replay, those will be brought, those could be future shows, and there's things that we could definitely plan on talking about on future shows too. Well, and here's from Marissa. She's a local real estate agent, and she does property management too. I don't know if she does just the long-term or if she has short-term as well. But do you know if all iTrip agents offer this service to realtors, and do all iTrip agents not sell or work with buyers and or short-term rental agents only? If so, how do I find an iTrip agent in our area to refer my clients to? And Marissa's here in Brevard County with me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you can go to itrip.net, and all of our territories are there, and it's one click away from a property manager that's in that area. So that's how you would find them. We all do the same thing. We're all full service, meaning that we try to handle everything for everybody. And so for your clients, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to try to give you guys good market analysis on properties you're looking at, try to guide you into good areas to look for properties and what types of properties are going to do well. And sometimes an iTripper is a realtor. We've got a couple of them. There's over 120, I think now, different franchises out there, and a handful of them are realtors. For the most part, we're not though. For the most part, we stick to our knitting and we stay in the short-term market, and that's all we do. And we're a really good complement to realtors. So I think you should always look at iTrip as a resource versus a competitor.
Definitely have to check to see if you're here in Brevard County, because this is some good information. And Kaylin Christensen has checking in from Iowa. She'd like to know how to get started with short-term rentals, because she's only had long-term rentals. So
wow.
Is there an abridged version?
With the 4 minutes left, that's a big one. I mean, you have a lot of questions you have to ask yourself. Number one, can you furnish a property with high quality furnishings that are going to be durable and that are going to be safe for your guests? Because if it's a long-term rental, it's not furnished. So that's the first thing. You're going to spend a lot of money on furnishings, and that goes right down to how many plates and silverware and glasses you have and all that stuff. And then you've got to look at your local legislation and make sure that you're not regulated out of what you want to do. And then I would look at insurance and ask your insurance, do they cover short-term rental, and what's the uptick? It should be a couple $100 uptick. It shouldn't be thousands, and it shouldn't be prohibitive. If it is, then you might have a problem in your area. Those are before you get too serious, you got to really ask yourself those questions. Is it legal? Can I get insured, and can I endure the expense of furnishing everything?
Excellent. Caitlin, I hope that answers your questions. And I'm sure, especially if you're looking to invest for a short-term rental here in Florida, I know Travis would be able to answer your questions specifically here, or itrip.net. You could find out if there's a short-term specialist there in your area of Iowa. And if you need a realtor to help you buy it, then let one of us know. We'll be more than happy to introduce you to our network, because I know we know connections up in Iowa too. Well, this has been a fun hour. It actually really flew by. I can't thank you enough for all this information, Travis. I got notes here, and this is one definitely going to watch the replay to see what I can do about getting better at talking with investors on short-term rentals and refer them to an expert like yourself.
Yes.
So thank you for your time very much.
It was an honor. Yeah, it was an honor and pleasure. I really, really do appreciate the time and the ability to talk about this. There's a lot of information in here that hopefully will clear things up for people, because I know this is mud for so many people, but it's a great business to get into, especially if you've got a professional that can hold your hand through it.
Yes.
Thanks, Travis.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
You got it.
Very cool. Well, then, for everybody who's tuned in and watched the show, whether live or on the replay, thank you very much. My name is Eric Larkin with Real Brokers, with Hector Chinea from Miami, Michele Bellisari from Boca Raton, and Aimee Burroughs from Palm Beach. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next show.
Thank
Bye,
you.
y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.